Late last month, a New York court made a possibly momentous verdict. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals confirmed a previous judgment against Argentina and found in favour of its hedge fund creditors. This could potentially be the beginning of the end of one of the longest running, most contentious sovereign debt restructurings in history. Elliott Associates, an aggressive hedge fund that has made legal battles with sovereigns its hallmark, has fought Argentina in court for over a decade. It wants to collect on $1.4 billion of defaulted debt, which the fund refused to include in its previous debt restructurings. In the process, it has managed to seize the Libertad, the Argentine Navy training ship, whilst it was docking in Ghana. Now it may be close to making legal history. Elliott argued that a so-called pari passu clause in Argentina's bonds prevented the country from paying the holders of its restructured debt, but not its defaulted debt. The US courts have agreed to Elliott's interpretation, but the implications could be big. With me to pass and discuss the verdict is Rodrigo Olivares-Caminal, a reader in banking and finance at the Centre for Commercial Law Studies at Queen Mary University of London. Rodrigo, thank you so much for being here today.
Robin, thank you very much for your invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, as we can see here, this is the Libertad, the ship that Elliott seized earlier this year. It's quite a dramatic story. I mean, this is an interesting case. I mean, what has it really thrown up?
I've been following it since very early stage when Argentina was launching the exchange offer and they had to pass the padlock law because they included a clause in the prospectus which was useless, which was the more favour creditor clause. That's why they had to pass the padlock law to reinforce the purpose of that clause. And that's something that hasn't been extensively covered yet, but that's something that will come up at a later stage if Argentina ends up needing to settle with Elliott.
Yeah. Now, if we bring up the first graph we have here showing the credit default swaps in Argentina, it was a huge spike here towards the end. People are getting worried again that Argentina could be facing another debt restructuring. I mean, why is that?
Well, that's not very difficult to foresee. The reality is that Argentina is being challenged in different jurisdictions. You were mentioning to this Navy ship, the Libertad, that's the 29th attempt to attach Argentine assets, including an attempt over a satellite of Argentina. And the reality is that Argentina is also converting some of its debt obligations of the political subdivisions from US dollars into Argentine pesos. And on top of that, this ruling has a massive significance because now it's still to be seen because the Court of Appeals asked the district court to clarify some aspects, but probably each time that Argentina makes a payment to those that enter into the exchange offer, Argentina will also have to pay the holdouts.
Yeah.
And that has massive implications.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, it also potentially has wider implications outside just Argentina, isn't it? This interpretation of pari passu, I mean, this was a very broad ruling in favour of Elliott as well. Does this have ramifications outside Argentina as well?
For the time being, there are too many uncertainties. The Court of Appeals remanded the case down to the district court to clarify certain aspects as to how the repayment formula will work and on which parties would this apply. Agents of the Argentine government or also third parties, mainly intermediary banks. That is against a particular provision of US law. So there are some things that still need to be seen. In the wider spectrum, there's some general concern about what would this imply for international financial institutions like the IMF. I particularly think that it will not affect the IMF at all. It's a complete different type of creditor. The IMF works or operates as an international lender of last resort, providing financing when nobody else provides, and as such, it has a different standing. And in the context of Europe, if you want to refer to the ECB, again, there's still a hot debated issue about PSI and the intervention of ECB and the exclusion of ECB in the Greek PSI. I personally think, again, the ECB acting within the S&P program, basically what they were doing is they were acting to preserve monetary stability. And as such, they should be excluded because that's a completely different type of creditor.
Rodrigo, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
Well, the decision has now been returned back to Judge Thomas Grieser of one of the lower courts. He will have to finally decide how much Argentina's creditors will get and how they will get it. Much will hinge on his decision still.